When I say, I love you, who or what do I actually love? Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. My name is Angela and today I will be talking about Automatic Eve by Rokuro Inue and translated by Matt Trevo. And this, as always, is a spoiler-free review. Now, this book really lives by its world building. The world building is exquisite. It's very much a historical fantasy and it takes us back to the time of the Shogunate in Japan. Now, this is kind of like a hereditary military dictatorship. Legally, the shogun answered to the emperor, but the more Japan evolves into a feudal society, the more the control of the military becomes the control of the whole of Japan. And this is very much the backdrop to this novel, where we kind of like are introduced to this constant fight between the shogun on the one hand and the emperor, or in this case actually empress, because this is more or less also an alternate history. We don't have an emperor, but we have an empress, and we have a matrilinear kind of like following of the imperial line, so to say. When it comes to the structure of this book, this is not what one would expect when we here in Western societies, especially Europe, America, hear the word novel. This is much more indebted to classical Japanese literature. Books like Genji Monogatari, The Tale of Genji by Murasaki Shikibu, who was a noblewoman, a lady-in-waiting at the imperial court as well, is that this type of literature is much more episodic. And in this case, the connections between those different episodes are only very slowly revealed. So at first, we do not really know how all this might come together. Because when it comes to the plot, it starts with introducing us, for example, to the world of competitive cricket fighting. A very niche elite sport of the Japanese aristocracy. From there we move to a young sumo wrestler who's on the up and coming, shows lots of potential, but is being asked by one of the crime bosses to fix his next fight. And then it goes on to a lady in waiting at the imperial court. And from there to a spy who finds it harder and harder to actually decide who is he really spying for. And those are just some of the episodes we encounter in this book. And as I say, the more the book progresses, the more it will become clear how those very diverse episodes are actually linked with each other. Also, the linking is not so much done just on the level of plot, so that the plot comes more and more together, that we get more and more the feeling, oh, there is actually a center to this story, that this is revolving around. This is happening as well, but also the linking is done by a lot of imagery that gets repeated. So if we find a cricket in the first story, this cricket might reappear later in another story. And we know immediately, okay, this is the cricket from the first story and that those two must be linked somehow. And also certain themes and also characters might reappear, so that we have this type of deja vu experience that we think, oh, hold on, haven't I read this before? But there's always a little twist to those kind like reappearances of objects, images, characters. And of course, we are introduced to the maker of the artificial Eve of the title here. And he's not just the maker of this artificial human, but there are a lot of other automata that play a role in this story, and they're kind of also very lovingly described and lend a lot of atmosphere to the story. When it comes to themes, this book explores several themes, and I think that there are three in particular. The first one is the question about what is real and what might be fake. And the novel actually starts with this. It starts with a firework of twists and turns when it comes to plot, but also when it comes to characters. And in the end, it's really very hard to decide anymore which of the characters are real, which might be an automaton, what's real, what's fake. Also, the identities those people say that they have, is that their real identity? Are they just pretending? So it's very twisty, turny in this respect. But this whole idea, or this whole question of what is real, what's fake, also of course then leads us to the big question of what is actually human? What makes our humanity? Where does it start? Where does it end? And the novel is very centered about this. And the third big theme is the big question about what is love? How do feelings like love even come into the world? And yeah, what do we mean when we say we love somebody? And this, of course, also is linked into jealousy. So on this level, this whole book is, yeah, a little bit a bittersweet love story. And it's not necessarily the pairings that are obvious where you think, oh yeah, of course those two are in love, or yeah, the will somebody fall in love with Eve, for example. But there are some surprising love stories and pairings in this book as well. Now, when it comes to female representation, it sounds good at first, no? So we have a female emperor and empress, but overall I have to say the representation of females in this book is quite conventional. So do not expect a feminist manifest here. This is not what this is about. As I say, it's really more about love than it is about actually, yeah, female bodies or male bodies. This is just one element. Of course, there is physical love involved, but it's more like a philosophical, yeah, questioning about what is actually love about. So on one level, this is a little bit disappointing because the alternate history aspect of the novel does not extend to the role and the agency of women. The fact actually that we have an empress and not an emperor is very subdued at the start of the novel. So this becomes only more evident and gathers a bit more momentum in the second half of this novel. But also a lot of scenes play in a brothel. So we are introduced to a lot of prostitutes, street workers. And in the first half, this is really more a nod to another trope of Japanese literature, the whole idea of ukiyo, the floating world, the world of, yeah, courtesans and prostitutes. But in the later half, the erotic undertones actually get much stronger, especially in those scenes when this automaton Eve, who is also a very sophisticated clockwork device, needs more and more maintenance, and the way this kind of like artificial female body is then taken apart and talked about and related to, yeah, it gets at times very male gazy. But that said, I still liked the story because, as I say, it's just one more ingredient in a story that is not necessarily centered on male or female bodies and their physical looks and their, let's say, sexual potential, but it's really centered on this question and more, as I say, the philosophical question about what is actually love and what do we mean when we say we are in love. So if you enjoy anime or manga like Ghost in the Shell, this might actually be for you because, as I say, it's very twisty-turny in the same way as those anime is. And it, yeah, also looks at similar topics like the anime. Okay, thank you for watching, and until the next time, happy reading and all the best.